Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about encrypted phones because that encrypted phone you may have may actually be owned by the FBI and Australian law enforcement. And here's what's going on. There are a million sources of this as this news broke today, and I'm not really worried about your phone, your iPhone, or your Android or anything like that because you're not a criminal. But let's talk about these mobile phones that are in question here because these phones were purchased on the black market and were basically set up to do one single function that was hidden behind a calculator app, and that was to send encrypted messages and photos. Now, for years, organized crime figures around the globe relied on these devices to orchestrate things like international drug shipments, coordinate trafficking of arms and explosives, and discuss contract killings as well. These users were trusting the device's security so much that they were laying out their plans not in code, but just in plain language, whatever language that was. They weren't even hiding it. This is how much they relied or believed that the security of this calculator app was giving them. Now, unbeknownst to them, the entire network was being run by the United States' Federal Bureau of Investigation in coordination with the Australian police. And today, global law enforcement officials revealed a 3-year operation in which they said they intercepted over 20 million messages and arrested at least 800 people in more than a dozen countries. This operation, which was known as Trojan Shield, actually represents a breakthrough for law enforcement. Although the authorities have cracked or shut down encryption platforms in the past, one of those was encrypted. Basically, Europol was able to hit that one. This is actually the first known instance in which officials have controlled an entire encrypted network since its inception, and then obviously use that to essentially snare these massive criminals. Now, Europol, the European police agency, described this effort as, quote, one of the largest and most sophisticated law enforcement operations to date in the fight against encrypted criminal activities. Countless spin-off operations will be carried out in the weeks to come, according to Europol, and American law enforcement officials are expected to announce further arrests today and moving forward as well. In Australia, the effort basically nailed domestic and international organized crime groups, an outlaw motorcycle gang, and more than 200 people were arrested. In Sweden, the police were able to arrest 155 people on suspicion of serious crimes and prevented the killing of 10 people thanks to this operation. The operation also targeted Italian organized crime and international drug trafficking organizations, and hundreds of more people were arrested in Europe throughout various countries. And to quote Reece Kershaw, the commissioner of the Australian Federal Police, we have been in the back pockets of organized crime. Now, the FBI's operation, according to court documents that the Justice Department unsealed on Monday, had its origins in early 2018 after the Bureau dismantled a Canadian-based encryption service called Phantom Secure. That company, officials said, supplied encrypted cell phones to drug cartels and other criminal groups. Seeing a void in the underground market, the FBI recruited a former Phantom Secure distributor who had been developing a new encryption communication platform called Anom. Now, this informant agreed to work with the FBI and then let the Bureau control the network, basically for the possibility of getting a reduced prison sentence. And according to court documents, the FBI also paid this informant $120,000. Now, Anom devices were basically cell phones that had been stripped of all normal functions. The only working app was disguised as the calculator function, and after entering a code, users could then send messages and photos with end-to-end encryption. Over 3 years, more than 12,000 Anom devices were sold on the black market to over 300 criminal syndicates operating in more than 100 countries, and that is according to Europol. Now, working with Australian authorities, the FBI and the informant developed a master key that allowed them to reroute the messages to a third-party country, decrypt them, and then they ultimately intercepted more than 27 million messages in this manner because they were basically stopping the message in transit, running what we call an MITM or man-in-the-middle attack, getting that information because they had the key to decrypt it, stealing it, and then letting it go on its way. So they weren't interrupting essentially one criminal talking to another back and forth, but they were seeing everything that was being sent and received. That is crazy. Now, the authorities also relied on the informant to get them devices, get these devices into highly insular criminal networks. Obviously, they've got their own gauntlets and filters before they're going to start accepting things. The informant started in October of 2018 by offering these devices to 3 other distributors with connections to organized crime in Australia. The big break, though, according to law enforcement officials, came when they were able to get one of the devices into the hands of Hakan Ayik, who is an Australian who fled the country a decade ago and whom the Australian police believe has been directing drug imports from the country of Turkey. Now, Jean-Philippe Lecouf, the deputy executive director of Europol, who said basically this operation gave law enforcement, quote, exceptional insight into the criminal landscape. And if they weren't actually obfuscating their messages, they were freely just talking with each other and could be completely read. That's obviously a huge, huge thing, not to mention getting insights into mentality, how they are actually running their operations to hide shipments and all of that. It's crazy. Now, through these encrypted cell phones, criminals organized the shipment of cocaine from Ecuador to Belgium in a container concealed with cans of tuna, according to U.S. documents. Cocaine was also trafficked in French diplomatic sealed envelopes out of Bogota, which is Colombia's capital. Now, the Australian authorities acknowledged that Anam had carried only a small percentage of the total volume of encrypted communications sent by criminal networks, but they said that Anam had an advantage. Those running it were able to listen directly to the target audience and give the users what they wanted. After users spoke of desiring smaller and newer phones, the authorities started to provide them. It's really that simple. So basically in this network, when the criminals were saying, I hate this clunky old iPhone 2 or whatever it is, can we get a newer phone here? They provided and said, sure, here's the latest version of this mobile phone. You're still secure. Now, Australian officials also said that they had revealed the operation on their Tuesday because of the need to disrupt dangerous plots currently in motion and because of limited timeframes for legal authorities invoked to intercept the communication. So basically, and I don't know Australian law in this case, but in the United States, you get a wiretap warrant that basically allows you to do these kinds of things and allows you to essentially do this for whatever long the warrant says. So if it says 30 days, you got 30 days to get your info. This obviously seems to be an ongoing operation for about 3 years now. So that's really interesting. I'm curious to see what that is. I'm going to be doing some research on that. Now, the Anam website previously displayed sleek graphics and glossing videos, basically that looked very much like Apple ads. And on Tuesday, it bore a new message. Quote, users who wanted to, quote, discuss how your account has been linked to an ongoing investigation could enter their account details. Meaning, oh my God, are we really going to get criminals that are going to punch in their information so that they are concerned? That's another way for law enforcement to track them. But I guarantee you, criminals were concerned about this and actually went and did that, not realizing the scope and depth of this. Now, Europol also said that in addition to the 800 arrests, operations conducted in the past days in 16 countries had led to 700 house searches, the seizures of tons of drugs, 250 firearms, 55 luxury vehicles, and about $48 million in several currencies and cryptocurrencies as well. And I think that this entire situation, one, good on law enforcement for obviously going after organized crime in this manner. That's a huge problem that the world has. I don't care what country you're in. So these kinds of things are good, but it really also underscores knowing and vetting the products that you are using. Obviously, they had such faith, such trust in Anam, in these devices, that they were able to speak freely and without code, and that really makes you stop and think about everything else. Now, I'm not saying that other legitimate companies out there couldn't be used in some such manner, like Signal, for example, which is communication back and forth, in a end-to-end encrypted, and as far as we know, it's good and solid, and we're not being looked at by law enforcement. But I think that does open up the possibility of that, because obviously one of the ways that criminals or terrorists or anybody of that ilk is going to coordinate is through the internet. And now they're going to have to change up that game, which I think in the next round is going to make it significantly harder for law enforcement. So then the question becomes, should this be big splashy headlines? Because obviously the FBI, Australian authorities, Europol, a whole bunch of others want essentially credit for this. Look at us, criminals beware. But at the same token, if I'm a criminal, I'm saying, okay, well, I'm ditching all of this methodology and I'm going to do something else, which means they may be dropping off the grid from another ongoing and active investigation from some law enforcement. We simply don't know. So it's going to be an interesting fallout, I think, in the criminal community, in the privacy and encryption community as well, because, again, we all want privacy. We all want encryption that governments can't tangle with. And what we're looking at here with criminals is the lowest common denominator of society, and we typically shouldn't be making laws that address them, that hinder the rest of us from getting that good encryption and everything. But this is going to open up, I think, a lot of debate, especially for those that are paying attention here on the privacy side. So I'm curious to see where this goes. But that is your really interesting news of the day, and We'll see what happens. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.